Good morning to you all. It is so lovely to be broadcasting live. This is our first event from down in the south west, and it's another sunny day. Now, if we'd known that things were going to be like this for schools this week, then we probably wouldn't have held a day in this week, because schools are so busy at the moment and the remote learning agenda has probably dropped off slightly. However, over the coming weeks, it's going to be a big deal for schools. So we'd like to introduce ourselves and to talk a little bit more about the EdTech demonstrator program that we are very pleased to be part of. We're one of the first 20 school settings to be part of this program, and it's all about peer-to-peer support from schools to other schools. So instead of listening to tech companies and tech firms that are selling things to schools, we are the people who are hopefully able to give you some really sage advice about what products will work and how to progress with IT in your school over the coming weeks, over the coming months, and potentially over the coming years. There are lots of decisions that schools will need to make over the coming years with EdTech, and we would hope to be a really realistic, practical part of that. There'll be more details about how to get involved with the EdTech demonstrator program later. So let's have a little quick think about us. I think we started running CPD in around 2012. I've been working at Mount Hawk Academy for about 10 years now, in an IT role originally, and then as the school expanded into being part of Aspire Academy Trust, which is now 28 primaries, our CPD program picked up, and we've always been interested in using tech practically in schools. We're quite dismissive about a lot of the stuff that is attempted in schools. We know that schools over many years have had potentially bad experiences with technology, buying into things, and they end up being put in cupboards, or they end up not really working. So we're so acutely aware of that, and we know that schools need to be careful about that over the coming years. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. There is some information on the screen there about me too. I used to work in tech journalism. I say used to, I've continued that over the years, evaluating products and writing about technology and spotting stuff that works for everyday people. I got into teaching after doing some applied media stuff, web design and production of video. So I've got this really strange mix for a primary school teacher. I still teach a day a week, and that is vital for informing me with everything that we do. So my name is Giles Hill, if I didn't say that earlier, and we are joined today with my colleague Peter Bradburn, who is the head of IT at Aspire, and he's here on the stream as well. Pete, do you want to just say a couple of words about yourself and your role?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, my name's Peter Bradburn. I'm the Director of IT and Communications for Aspire. That's my role is very much one around the operational side of IT, and that involves implementing systems and evaluating things in procurement, and some of that is sort of broader strategy that's required in an educational organisation. I've been working in education for 15 years. Started off in secondary and been with Aspire for 10 years. And have actually, have built our IT systems from scratch. Really, we use a wide range of different systems from different companies, including Apple and Google and Microsoft. And through that, I've built up quite in-depth knowledge of a whole load of different things and how they can all be used together.
Thanks, Pete. That's brilliant. I love the fact that you focused there on the fact that we understand so many of these different platforms. You would say that we are platform agnostic, but actually that doesn't state the fact that we're actually very opinionated about how different technologies can fit into different parts of a school structure. And in fact, across Aspire, we have products from Google, from Apple, and Windows PCs as well, and we know when those things can fit into the structure of a school. So again, coming back to this fact, what is real for primary schools? Who teaches in them? Well, there are some wonderful, wonderful teachers in primary schools. Oh my goodness, the commitment that they show, the fact they care so much about the social and emotional development of the children, and the commitment towards their, academic learning is huge. But for lots of teachers, they are not tech specialists. Okay, they are not tech specialists, and they are not the ones who necessarily are going to spot where technology can work well in the class. So part of our role is to see the products that can work well, and to introduce them, and to evaluate them, and then let other schools move on with that. If you look at the pictures just there, now I looked that up. That was from my class about 4 years ago, I think, and it was I often talk about this one. It was a day that got trashed because of the rain, which, as you know, might happen in Cornwall. They were off to this sports event, which was between schools, a lovely event. Everyone had been looking forward to it, and they turned up, and then the heavens opened, and it was like that for the day, and the event was cancelled. So we were in school, and I'll be first one to admit, I didn't have a plan B in that situation. I really didn't. So thinking on my feet, it was Chromebooks. We're going to edit your English work, and you're going to be writing with these. And I had this thought that, maybe this will work for 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. And my goodness, the whole class, they were absolutely committed to that. And you could see, as I've said over there in the bullet point, they were desperate to actually work in this way. And they were just using Google Docs. They were just using Google Docs and stuff from their books. And actually it showed that EdTech needn't be really, really flash stuff. It just needs to be practical. It just needs to work there and then. It needs to have stuff like, autosave. We can close the lid and off we go, and we can come back to it. So it's those things that schools really need to focus on, not being people on the edge of innovation, not putting VR goggles on everyone, not getting bamboozled by all this stuff, but actually thinking in primary schools, there are very discrete things, there are very distinct things that we can do well. And if we do them well, then we open up a whole world to our major group. And it is key stage 2 where we're predominantly focused in this way of working. My feeling with working with children is over these years is that down at the lower end of the school, especially these days, actually schools are a sanctuary away from the technology and the screens that get them at home. It's in the year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6 where we really should be accelerating and opening up opportunities for them. So look, ultimately, we want to empower teachers. We want to empower schools and empower trusts so that they can make good decisions about this stuff, so that they can look at the options and say, all right, we're going to go for that, we're going to go for that. Year 1, we're doing this. Next year, we'll invest in some of that. Next year, we'll invest in some of that. And just look at some of the things here. I've picked out 4 things from the last, 8 years. And it just shows you that the technologies that really work have heritage. They continue year after year. It's not gimmick after gimmick. You've got Tapestry there on the left, which is possibly the most successful in-class tracking system that I've known. I think it was in 17,000 settings, and it's probably up to 20,000 now. And that works because it's targeted a situation where teachers wanted to take photos of work. They need to assess what the children are doing. And when children are 3 years old and 4 years old, it's more about the process of learning. So it fits in perfectly with that. And what I like about Tapestry is that it came from the early years community. Somebody who's married to a coder, and it's grown from there. So that is, an example. As I alluded to before, the Chromebooks. Now we were very much kind of heading down the Apple route a few years ago, and we, by evaluating how those were being used in the class, and then seeing that actually it was this Chromebook device with all of the advantages that brings, we've very much headed that way. And I have to say, if it wasn't for devices like that, I really wouldn't be feeling so enthusiastic about EdTech in schools. I really would be thinking, do you know what? There's 30 children in the class, and they're really young, and actually it's so hard to make them independent with stuff. With the Chromebook and the architecture that we're starting to put in, the fuss of technology is taken out of their hands. So you'll see there that we've worked with single sign-on systems. Some children might have a QR code that they log into a Chromebook with, and it syncs up all the passwords. Some children might have an emoji password. And in terms of remote learning, there have been challenges with rolling this out to the wider community and using it on loads of different devices. But that part of our system is going to be in place so that children who are in school will be able to use those login systems in school, and it will also transfer out of school. Okay, so in terms of remote learning, we're adapting what we've put in so it can work in the wider community. I've put Book Creator on the end there just because it's one that's worth flagging up in terms of this is a tool that in many ways is more appropriate for children to use of our age. Instead of Word, instead of Google Docs or Google Slides or PowerPoint, this thing, Book Creator, it really blitzes any situation where you're thinking, I want the children to create a piece of work. Now, whether that's a combination of pictures or writing or video or sound or whatever, all these lovely things that can actually work quite well in remote learning situations, that tool at the moment stands out as, you know, being a good place to go to. There are some improvements I'd like to see with it over the coming months, but it's certainly somewhere that's getting a lot of traction and attention at the moment. So I've talked about empowering schools a bit. The conversations that we've had with people already through the EdTech Demonstrator Programme have shown that by pointing staff to certain things and being quite unflinching in our opinions of what is the right direction to go in, that hopefully we can send schools into that direction. And also I would say back to Pete's experience with all of this stuff, building up a team of IT staff across a group of schools is really something that schools perhaps need to consider, whether that's within their academy groups or whether that's with other partnerships. IT being deployed en masse can certainly work well when you're thinking about it on a larger picture. Obviously, we've got 28 primary schools that we're working across, and you can imagine that scaling up things and working remotely and deploying things through the web just has so much efficiency in it in that point. So let's focus towards some of this stuff on remote learning. And from the start, I will tell you that I don't think there's a setting out there that hasn't been kind of bamboozled by ideas. We could do this, we could do that, we could grab parents' attention with this, and we could do this. And the truth is that it's a very nuanced situation. You've got some private schools out there who've managed to do live stream sessions that start at certain times of the day, and they've managed to have that working. In some ways it's worked well, in other ways it hasn't worked well. But for the majority, and there are some state schools that have managed to do that as well. You know, if your school has a one-to-one situation with technology and children have gone home with devices, you're probably in a much better situation with that. But let's be honest about where we are with the COVID-19 epidemic and where people are. There is you know, you can't say, I'm not suggesting it's chaos because people are living their lives very well, but they are such different lives. Children can't be expected to be online at 10 a.m. like we've met today at 10 a.m. They can't be. You can't say to one family, you've got to do this and you've got to do that, because they may not have any devices. They might just have a mobile phone. So everything that we do has got to think about whether we are being inclusive with our communities. And actually, out of our 28 primaries, we've got all sorts of variation within that. So it's not something to jump into and say, here's a solution, let's do it, unless you've got that infrastructure there already in terms of devices that are at home. Schools can increase their media presence really well. Schools are going to have to think about, how do we communicate with our community? How do we galvanize our community? If we're using social media, if we're putting video out there, how do we make that slot that comes once or twice a week quite professional in nature? And again, how do we bring our communities together and include people and make them feel part of this? Let's move on a little. You've also got the fact that some children potentially are not going to be coming back to school for months. Some children may spend some time in those schools. So of course there needs to be provision that works for those children who are only at home and those children who are able to attend school in some way. And of course we might have the peaks and troughs and changes of attendance and all of that comes with it. So I'm just flagging up questions here. I mean, the point about it is we can help you to think about what you've got. We can help you to think about, well, we've got these logins that the children know, but are they really going to work with a VLE platform? Which VLE platform is going to be right for us at the moment? And possibly what can we think about further down the line that we might be able to move towards? So it's not knee-jerk reactions, it's how can we bolster up things as they stand at the moment, and where can we move to later on. Now I've put there's a few more products up there because this is part of it. This is part of the situation, that if teachers can engage with those gamification type products that motivate children, then we can keep children perhaps on track, we can keep them well practiced, and we can keep them a little bit excited about learning as well. Those products are not the be all and end all, they're part of the big picture. But for a lot of our teachers that we're talking to, it's about saying to them, look, you can log into those systems, you can look at analysis on children, and you can tailor what they are doing. And for example, I mean, something like Spelling Shed, it does have the option for some live games in there. So you could say to children, look, next Wednesday at 11, we're going to be having this spelling, they call it a hive game. We're going to be having this spelling battle. And so some children could engage in that. They might not be able to, but you can kind of get those elements of liveness. Again, I'm not talking about any live video, but those bits can be tapped into. Something like Times Tables Rockstars doesn't really need that much introduction because it's so well embedded everywhere. As SumDog has developed well over the last few months, few years, and it's in a position where you can really sort of pick and choose what you want the children to do. And the thing I like about SumDog is the children do so much maths. I mean, they're just chucked question after question after question. So in terms of engaging them, in terms of keeping that fluency going, it works. So what I'm saying to teachers is, you may well have these systems already. This is the time to look at them carefully and think, how can we use those with our children? There's so much more you can talk about with remote learning points. Let's just have a look. These are the major VLE platforms that schools are moving to. We talked a bit about Tapestry, and my advice has been, you've got Tapestry running, keep hold of that thing, because that is a key asset to you if you've built up a parent community with that. And there are other bits in between. I mean, there's been big success with Class Dojo, and Seesaw sort of fits somewhere in between the Google Classroom and the Teams type approach. Again, there are pros and cons to all of these systems, whether that be the price or what else they can offer, or how easy it is for children to access them. And next Tuesday at 1 p.m, that's when we'll run a larger session actually thinking about these VLEs in a bit more detail. So moving on to where we are.